What do you call a cow with a twitch? Beef jerky. What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to be recording live from a hotel room, so it's going to be a bit of a different Golden Vendor review video, but the information will be the same because we're going to break down all the sets inside both the furnishing vendor as well as the traditional Golden Vendor. We're going to start with the Golden and go from there, and let us talk about set number 1, which is Bands of the Imperium, which comes from the White Gold Tower. Now, a lot of people don't really know what to use the Bands of Imperium for. However, as somebody who's gone for no death, hard mode, speedruns, gobbledygook, it's 5-piece of when you take damage, you grant you and your group members within 8 meters a damage shield that absorbs 11k damage for 6 seconds. This is going to occur every 12 seconds. This is a great set to use to just make sure you're not dying to really goofy mechanics, because a lot of times, even if you try to build a little bit more health based on those Trifecta runs, sometimes you can still get one shot by goofy things, and this can kind of keep you and give you a little bit more leeway when you're doing those dungeons. So Brands of the Imperium is actually a really good dungeon set to use for that purpose. Is it necessarily something you need to go out and purchase and make sure you have the golden ring of? Not necessarily, but it's definitely a cool set to highlight. Next is Combat Physician, which is another set that does something ironically very similar. It gives you a magic aligned crit chance, and when you critically heal yourself or an ally, you grant your target a damage shield that absorbs 4308 damage for 6 seconds. This can occur every 6 seconds. This is actually notably worse, so let's talk about why that is. A set like this could be used in some situations such as Cyrodiil. However, damage shields are going to be halved there if the damage shield is already noticeably weak, and versus the other set that we highlighted, that gives a shield to everybody. This gives a shield to one person. So it's just important to kind of notice the highlights, because I want to make sure people understand why one set is good and one set is bad. This one comes from Wayrest Sewers 1 and 2. You'll probably be picking up this set regardless, just because of the fact that everybody's farming other sets from Wayrest Sewers, but you don't need to use the Combat Physician. Next up, we have Grifffallens Ferocity, which comes from, you probably guessed it, the only place that has griffins in the Overland. Don't fact check me, Somerset. This set is actually pretty cool because after you deal damage, you gain Minor Force and Minor Expedition for 10 seconds, increasing your crit damage done by 10% and increasing your movement speed by 15%. This is a really cool set that you could build into some unique things, such as some farming builds, questing builds, but obviously, when I say those words out loud, this is not something that you need to go out and get into the golden version of it, but it's kind of cool to highlight what you could use this set for, because it's one of the more cheaper sets in the game that does give you some pretty good bonuses that are generally very helpful. Next up, we have Livewire. When you take damage, you overload your circuits, applying major concussion to enemies within 8 meters of you, and healing for 1,000 health for each enemy hit. This can occur once every 6 seconds. This suffers from the, there are just sets that do this better syndrome. Unfortunately, the Clockwork City Overland set of Livewire is just outpaced by other sets that can also heal you for damage done, or truthfully, just skills that can heal you for damage done. So Livewire, unfortunately, sees very little play, but let's talk now about the monster sets. The first one being Lord Warden, which comes from the Imperial City Prison. Now, we have the Shoulders. We'll quickly talk about why this is a good set, because it does see some utilization. So its one piece is armor, which you may use this as a one piece if you're trying to build a PvP one bar or one piece setup, excuse me, where you're trying to kind of counterbalance using a mythic and you need another one piece to go with it. But if you use its 2-piece, when you take damage, you have 50% chance to summon a shadowy orb for 10 seconds that increases your physical and spell resistance of you and your group within 8 meters by 3,180. There are some trials where people will use this on off tanks or support sets, and it can be a helpful way to make sure that you're not getting one shot on specific mechanics. It is pretty niche. There's generally something that people generally want to have, but it's not something that's necessarily essential for the average player to have. Next up, we have the Spawn of Mafala Shoulders, which when you deal a fully charged heavy attack, you create a web under the target for 10 seconds that deals continuous poison damage every second to all enemies within 4 meters. This can occur once every 10 seconds and scales off your weapon or spell damage. This comes from Fungal Grotto 2, a bit of a harder dungeon these days, and Overall, this is a perfectly fine set. It's 1 piece being stamina, it's 2 piece being a decent bit of poison ticking. But here's where this one falls short, is that if you're going to be using a full 2-piece monster set, you basically need to outpace a full-blown 5-piece. If you're going to be building into a heavy attacking build, you're probably going to be using the Oaken Soul. Let's just be realistic, which means that you're going to be cutting down the total amounts of slots that you can have, and to put a whole monster set in would then keep you from having another 5-piece set in. So this does not outpace any 5-piece set these days, unfortunately, and that's why, even though you could definitely see a world where people would use this, it's not something that you need to go out and purchase. And we finish off with some spooky items, but I really want to highlight one in particular, but we're going to show all of them, obviously. But Azur's Plasm Cage. I actually have a few of these in my house. The amount of blue light these project is actually pretty incredible. And when I bought these, they had not been in the luxury furnishing vendor for a while, and I paid around 200,000 gold. And they're now in the vendor for 100,000 gold. The amount of light that this thing will project onto your house is pretty incredible. So if you need a lot of blue light for whatever reason, maybe you just want to run a little light onto that house, consider those items. These other items are very thematic to necromancers. They're very thematic to skulls. There could definitely still be a housing contest focused on Halloween. And from that aspect, I think these could be some decent items to invest in. These columns look really cool. They're pretty cheap for the fact that it's essentially a gigantic column that you can essentially put inside your house. I think that these are all perfectly serviceable to invest in. The only ones I would avoid are the Necromancy Spire Huge. I think that it's just too niche for 100,000 gold. And I think if you're going to be looking at these items, I would go with the columns or even potentially the candles. Because a couple little skull candles, to add a little razzle-dazzle, to the old home, that's probably a decent investment for you. But overall, it's a good all-around vendor between both of them. And even though I'm recording this here in the middle of a hotel room, I can still appreciate the items in the vendors this week. But everyone, thank you guys so much again for watching. Unfortunately, I don't have my intro and my outros with me, as well as my card that shows who won the previous giveaway drawings. But I do want to note, though, that because today we have arrived for our ESO event that is going on tomorrow, I want to give everyone one final opportunity to put in the comments below and say, hey, Jake, I think that you should talk to the developers about this. This is a suggestion that I have. And then we can kind of, throw that to them. You guys have given some fantastic ideas. The number one being a movement speed increase to mount, essentially when you're mounted in Cyrodiil. So just use Battle Spirit to give a mount speed increase. And that was a fantastic suggestion that I think would help people get into Cyrodiil on new characters. It would help kind of cut down on the combat time. And just those tiny suggestions like that, I think, go a long way. And they're very constructive as well without being overly, difficult to solve a small problem. So keep putting those suggestions in the comments below. As always, though, we're doing our 2 other giveaway drawings. All you have to do is look for a hidden word to be flashed upon the screen. First person to comment that word will win. And the second thing is just be subscribed/follow on Twitch and Twitter. You guys were fantastic yesterday when we were streaming on Twitch. I just want to thank you again. The stream crashed like the halfway through, and then we had to restart it and get everybody back in, and we were able to still push through and get a lot of people. So I just want to thank you guys again. It was worth only getting 2 hours of sleep before flying all the way across the United States for. And yeah. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, guys. Oh, you best remember to like and subscribe, or I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Ta-ta.